Blue, so we're going to go live. Click. And we're live. Good evening, everyone. It is Thursday, August 25th, 2022. It is 5 o'clock p.m. on the dot, and I've had a secret goal to start the show on time for the last month, and I have finally attained it, which reminds you people, never give up on your dreams.
So it is not just any cheese night. It is the norms breaking cheese night. And we're going to start, because Kate's not here to type norms into the chat. We're going to break all the norms. We're going to start by introducing each other's norms break. Genevieve Della Fera is not wearing a tiara today. And
it's a problem.
There's no tiara. It's, and that's just destruction of a norm.
It is. And, as you can see, sometimes we have norms that also have functional purposes to try and restrain the wild. But other times we have norms to provoke reactions. And as you can see, Ben is dog shirtless, corn shirtless, emu shirtless, rhino shirtless. There is not an animal shirt to be found.
I'm wearing a very respectable summer shirt.
What happened today?
Well, that's an interesting question. I woke up this morning and had a meeting with the president of Brookings, and who is always meticulously dressed. And I thought it would be a little bit of a annoying chest thump to show up in a dog shirt. So I put on a normal shirt and we had a very nice meeting. And I'm sure she would have been fine with my wearing a dog shirt, but it just seemed like it would have required explanation. And I didn't think
so out of respect for other social norms, we have chosen the norms that we will adhere to.
Yeah. And then I had I kind of injured my back a little bit on the last special military operation. And so I came back.
The big ass projector.
I did not lift the big ass projector. I cannot lift the big ass projector myself. Actually, that's a physical impossibility. I did, however, lift the generator, and that was a mistake, as it turned out. The generator did not want to be lifted by me alone, and so a little minor back strain. And so I kind of, rather than stay at Brookings, I kind of came home and worked from home today and forgot that I wasn't wearing a dog shirt. And so then rolls around 5 o'clock. I pour myself a glass of wine. I've already eaten the cheese. And I realize only when I sit down that I am not wearing a dog shirt. And so and that's when we decided, you're not wearing a tiara, I'm not wearing a dog shirt. It's the norms breaking cheese night. We are not allowed to have fun anymore. We're apparently not allowed to have dog shirts or tiaras either, at least not tonight.
Not tonight, but in lieu of fun, we have a lot of other norms that are becoming more normal than I would like them to be.
We've got everything the audience wants to talk about. So Greek chorus, just flag for us, subjects, tell us you want to come on. And I have a piece of news.
Ooh, would you like to do news first, or should I rapture someone?
While you're rapturing somebody, I will tell the piece of news, which is I am going tomorrow to Quebec City for the first time in my life. Never been there before. And I'm going to see one Eve Gaumont, and very excited about it.
That's wonderful. You guys can work on the obliteration of food.
Oh yeah, I mean, Eve doesn't eat. She only injects food.
Hi, Daniel.
Daniel.
Hello.
You have a new pillow.
A pillow I've always had, but just hasn't appeared on screen.
It's new to the In Lieu of Fun community, and so we're delighted to see you.
Daniel, you have a couple of suggestions, so I'm going to leave it to you which one you want to talk about first.
So I'll just throw both out and you guys choose what you want to talk about. First question is, in hindsight, was Pelosi's trip to Taiwan a bad idea? And the second question is, if you could discuss the legality of Biden's recent student debt relief actions and where you think it's most vulnerable to legal challenge, if it is.
So that is a very interesting question, the latter one, of which I am completely unqualified to address it. I know there was an OLC memo released on the subject that is controversial. I don't know the answer to the question where the authority is purported to come from. I mean, I know in general terms that it was a kind of claimed as a function of a sort of post 9/11 statute. I don't know whether the authority is robust enough to incorporate the action used for it. It's a little bit outside my field. That said, I will say that there's an issue that I can't get my hands around, which is everybody's talking about how this will do in legal challenge. I don't know who has standing to raise it.
Who's the injured party? Yeah.
Yeah, the federal government forgives GDF's debt. Who is injured by that enough, if sufficiently? So remember, under Tennessee Valley Authority, taxpayer standing doesn't exist. So you don't get to say, hey, if you forgive her debt, that hurts me because I pay more taxes. So who has standing to challenge it? And I have not really studied that. I mean, I haven't studied any question related to that, but I think there may be a serious problem finding a party with standing. I can't, off the top of my head, I can't figure out, unless there's some financial institution that's functioning as an intermediary of these debts and taking a commission and losing its commission. It's just not clear to me who suffered injury in fact.
Yeah. Okay. So what about the question about Nancy Pelosi's trip to Taiwan? Was that a bad idea in hindsight?
So, well, I thought it was a bad idea, although a righteous bad idea at the time. And my view at the time was that it probably wasn't a good idea, but I was not going to, I think I tweeted at the time, as soon as she left, that we should not criticize it while she's there. Look, I mean, I think overt support for Taiwan is a good thing. And I don't know what she was trying to accomplish other than, making a statement. And it seems to me that you have to be careful with statements, because it may be that they speak louder to the Chinese than they do to the Taiwanese, or the rest of the world. So I thought it was probably badly considered, and those things should be done in conjunction with the administration, not over the administration's objections. That said, I also think that it's her decision to make, and once she makes it, everybody should support her, the propriety of her doing it. And I thought it was kind of gross that so many people were eager to criticize it while she was there, or right as she was contemplating it. And so I basically think it was probably a mistake, but I would not criticize it just because I don't think it is a good idea to favor the Chinese government with our own internal deliberations on the subject. If she had called me and said, should I do this, I would have said no, but I wouldn't spend any time giving the Chinese the gratification of saying that publicly.
That is something I always wonder about, like at least now, particularly because we are so divided. I'm just going to chat for a second while Dr. Doom is still trying to connect. And it's just that I feel like at different times there's been a more cohesive agreement on foreign policy, especially when it comes to other like states and different actors, and particularly because we live in a time now where there is a very aggressive country invading peaceful countries with very little ramifications and have been for quite a while. Our national understanding of risks when it comes to discussing foreign policy would be higher than it is. Does that make sense? I don't know. I just feel like people don't give it a lot of consideration. It's just a lot of off the cuff. Well, I don't think this is everyone wants their 2 minutes and they get their little Twitter.
Well, it used to be that there was a rule, which I thought was a good one, although I violated it myself during the Trump years, that you didn't criticize American officials while they're traveling abroad. And, I thought Trump kind of exploded that rule because there was no way not to criticize the Helsinki summit, right? And the flip side of that rule was that American officials didn't act outrageously abroad. And I don't think anything that Pelosi did was outrageous. So I think she made a judgment call. I'm not sure it was the right one. I'm not sure it wasn't the right one. Mm-hmm. I would have advised against it. But once she decided to do it, both in the interests of the dignity of American officials traveling overseas and in the interest, frankly, of the Taiwanese, you have to the message has to be a U.S. Speaker of the House or a member of Congress has the right to go where they want in any country that will take them. And, we defend their right to do it. And I think the priorities, getting the priorities right are important there. Hello, John Bordeaux.
How are you?
Hello, friends. I am wonderful.
How is your move going? Or has it done?
It is not done. We're clearing out 32 years of stuff from a house.
Oh my goodness.
And it looks like a Goodwill threw up in my living room. It's really pretty ugly.
Have you found homes for your furniture?
No. Would you like some? Do you need furniture? We have armoire desks. We got stuff.
I'm okay right now.
I'm bringing stuff to Ben, by the way. He doesn't know. I did signal it and he didn't answer me. I'm going to bring Ben some stuff because I know he's eager to recover some specific merchandise. Other than that, by the way, I have not been around because I lost all front teeth in November. Yes. And I just finished dental implant surgery. So now I'm back. I don't come on camera, but I've been hiding for a year. Anyway, I'm back. Hi.
Welcome back.
Thank you. The question I posed was that, we've heard for years that Paxton, right, Attorney General of Texas, is under indictment or report investigation. Gates, of course, just won his primary while still being credibly accused of child trafficking. And while these are not desirable people in my life, at what point that stuff was leaked? We know that they're the subject of investigations, but the DOJ assiduously says, we're not going to talk about investigation because we don't want to smear someone's reputation if they turn out to not be, guilty of anything. Well, we can't prosecute. How do we balance those? I mean, I don't like these guys, but I mean, at some point, don't they deserve some sort of relief from being constantly under this cloud that is not resolved?
Well, all right. So first of all, you load the dice with that question when you say the word leaked.
Sorry, yes, I don't know it was leaked. You're right. I'm sorry.
Right. And, there are many ways that the fact of an investigation becomes public, most of which do not involve impropriety on anybody's part. For example, defense lawyers are perfectly entitled to talk about their own client's appearance before the grand jury. they're entitled when, for example, search warrants happen. The recipient of the search warrant is perfectly entitled to slip it to a journalist. That's not a leak. That's how we know what happened at Mar-a-Lago. And finally, when you're involved in some level in sex with minors, and people who you're involved with it plead guilty, the documents associated with their pleas become public, right? And so there's the fact that it is known that there is an investigation, to me, does not oblige the Justice Department to say anything. And
does it oblige them to move faster, maybe? I mean,
nope.
I take all your points. Oh, okay.
No, I don't think so. So the limiting principle is that there are statutes of limitations, and there are circumstances in which it is perfectly fine to say, hey, the statute of limitations on this has now run. John Bordeaux has been cleared, or, he hasn't been indicted. He's not going to be indicted. At this point, we should, whatever he did is a matter of the judgment of history, not the judgment of law. So the statute of limitations can be a too long process for some people. There are circumstances in which the Justice Department, I think, does have an obligation to speak, to clear somebody. The classic example being Richard Jewell, who was actually the subject of FBI leaks as a person of interest in the Centennial Park bombing in Atlanta. He was, in fact, completely innocent. And when at the point at which they realized that A, he was innocent, and B, they had smeared him and destroyed his life, I think they had an obligation to say something, which eventually they did. And then, of course, it turned out that that Eric Rudolph had done this. I mean, I think when the government puts somebody in a position like this, then those are the situations that require the government to formally clear somebody. There are lesser examples of that. I think it is very good anytime the government can clear something up for it to do so. I don't think the government owes Ken Paxton or Matt Gaetz anything. It owes them a charging decision at whatever point it makes it. And if they want to say at that point the investigation's over, they're free to do that. But I am not crying in my soup for Matt Gaetz.
I'm not emotionally invested here either. I hear you.
The other thing
other than my own. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's kind of interesting, though, too, because there used to be at least a presumption that if the government was bringing a case, there was enough trust in the institutions that those cases would be valid cases. And now you have this odd discourse where people under investigation and defendants, I'll rephrase that, potential defendants are bringing the information into the press cycle to undermine the Justice Department, bringing the information into the press cycle to craft their own narrative. And I think that that's really dangerous as well. So,
but is that new?
No, it isn't, but it also is just like, I think our collective memory is like kind of fading, because like when you say Matt Gaetz, it's been a while since aside from his regular blowhardness, but like it's been a while since I thought about the fact that he's still under investigation for sex trafficking. And I mean, there's just so much stuff coming at us all the time that as just a population that's consuming news, how present is it? I don't know. So maybe.
Yeah, there's also a lot of space between not indicted and cleared. So,
yes.
There are many reasons why you might not indict Matt Gaetz, but also might not want to issue a statement saying, we've looked at this and there's, he didn't do anything wrong. And A good example of that is Bob Mueller decided not to indict or recommend or say that there was obstruction of justice in volume 2 of the Mueller report, but he also did not. He very clearly said we're not clearing him, right? And I think prosecutors generally aren't in the business of clearing people, and it's probably a good thing.
Actually, that reminds me of an unrelated question, if I can.
Yeah.
I read something saying that the special counsel is apparently supposed to have the same powers as the AG himself to make certain decisions within their lane, and that Mueller believed he was bound by the OLC policy, but maybe he wasn't, and Barr was obligated to tell him, "You are not bound by this. You can make a decision to prosecute." I saw that in some of the treatments. I was curious if you had any thoughts on that.
I mean, Mueller absolutely was bound by the OLC opinion on indicting the president, and he was not wrong about that. A lot of people don't believe that opinion is right, but there's no question that Bob Mueller was part of the executive branch, and that opinion binds the executive branch.
Great. Okay. And so it binds the AG as well.
Yes. Well, so that's a slightly complicated question. The AG is one of 3 officials in the government that can overrule that opinion. The special counsel cannot overrule that opinion.
So the special counsel does not have AG-type powers within his investigation.
He has delegated powers of the AG, but he does not have the ability to overturn an OLC opinion.
Interesting. I was wondering, was reading a hot take or a reasonable take. Thanks.
Yeah, who's ever saying that, it's a wrong take. However,
it was one of the interpretations of the memo. Yeah, however hot it was, yes.
Thank you, John. I hope you have a...
And it's still rosé season, people. Don't fall for the red. You still get the rosé.
All right. Next up, we're going to bring up John Hawkinson. John, can you see us? How you doing?
So I assume that you brought me on because Ben thought it was reasonable to ask this question. And if not, I don't want to ask it.
Oh, I didn't check.
I'm unafraid of any question from you, John.
I don't want to nag you, Ben, but I would love to get an update on the concept of the N-scale trolley problem. And
so the progress of the N-scale trolley problem is the following. Genevieve de la Fera, as you know, sent me an N-scale trolley. I have not yet acquired track or a power supply for it because my house has been under construction. But I plan to do that and do some live action trolley problems in the next block of time.
Well, I'm happy to facilitate, happy to send you some pieces. I think I emailed you a list a while ago. So, I don't know what kind of incentives are good here.
So I if you have N-scale track, and the key is the switch, of course. But if you have engaged stuff that you want to send, feel free. But I can also just, go to the store or buy some on Amazon.
All right.
All right, John.
It's going to happen, man. Don't fret.
With a guitar.
No fretting with a guitar.
All right. Now we're going to have Joel. Uh-oh. Joel, how you doing?
Nudge.
Hold on, let me unmute you. There you go.
Hi.
How you
You're
doing?
in your garage.
This is the shop. I'm working. So this is where all the toys get made. I'm head toy maker.
That's super
Head
cool.
elf.
Santa gave you a promotion?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes, Santa gave me a promotion for all of my diligence and excellent singing. So I had a question and a comment. The question was, when are we having, in lieu of FunCon, costume contest, panels, where would we have it and when will we have it? I've got my Led Zeppelin t-shirt. I know it's not a dog, but it has a Birdman on it. And then
dude, there's a very simple answer to this question.
Okay.
We're having it as soon as somebody other than me organizes it.
Okay.
Okay. Challenge.
Um,
That is a challenge.
you know, you tell me where to show up for In Lieu of FunCon. I'll be there.
I need the pen.
I'll pay my own way. I'll stay at whatever hotel. Make it somewhere fun.
You
But,
shouldn't say something like that to me because you know what a god awful nudge I am.
But you know, here's the trick. I get to do no organization for it. That's the rule.
Got it. And then the comment was, I just got back from Quebec City, and it is a fascinating little city. It is the most European city I've ever seen in North America. It's really interesting. Enjoy.
Well, I have wanted to go for a long time. I was scheduled to go several years ago, and we had a medical emergency in the family and got canceled. It's got, as you know, I'm kind of into speed skating. It's got the only, I think, fully indoor speed skating rink on this side of the Mississippi. I think there may be one in Vancouver, but it's you know, there aren't that many places in the United States to do long track speed skating, and so I'm very excited about Quebec City.
Yeah, very cool. Very French. So go enjoy your trip. Thanks, guys.
All right, we'll bring up Richard.
Richard Wattenbarger.
How are you?
Very well, thanks. How are you?
I almost didn't recognize you without the dog shirt, but I gave it away.
I barely recognize myself without the dog shirt.
Hey, I just realized that I know nothing about the origins of Lawfare, and I was wondering if there's an origin story, if there are multiple origin stories that scholars argue about, if there's some sort of myth that guides people about this origin. So I'm just wondering, where did it all start?
So it doesn't have a mythical origin story. It has a truly factual origin story, which is a little bit embarrassing, actually, because the story is so out of touch with what the institution has become. Like, we were so naive. But the basic answer is that Jack Goldsmith and I were knocking around the idea of having a blog because we were interested in the degree to which two institutions had really, three really, had really having a real impact on conversation in the legal space that we were both working in. So one was Balkanization, which was a blog founded by frequent guest on this site, Jack Balkan. But the main value of Balkanization, from our point of view, was the work that Marty Lederman, who's now back in government, was doing on it, which was just really, I think, taught both Jack and me that you could do scholarship at the speed of journalism. And so that was influence number one. Influence number two was the Volokh conspiracy, which is a group of conservative and libertarian lawyers who were just having an immense impact on a lot of things, including the Supreme Court. And people like Oren Kerr, also frequent guest on this show, were just really, again, showing that you could do scholarly journalism in real time using this form. And then the third was it's a site called SCOTUS Blog. And SCOTUS Blog was really influential on me because it kind of created this idea of like covering an institution, right? So it wasn't ideologically oriented like Balkanization, which is a group of lefty liberal types, or the Volokh conspiracy, which is a conservative community. it was oriented around the institution of the Supreme Court and just providing useful information. And so I think subconsciously what we did was kind of to hybridize these three models. You build a community of experts, not not for ideological reasons, but around a subject matter. And so that was the idea that we were talking about. And what happened was Jack went to the Ninth Circuit Judicial Conference. Jack had clerked for Justice Kennedy. And he went to the Ninth Circuit Judicial Conference, and Justice Kennedy was speaking, and they were in Hawaii that year. And Kennedy says in his speech, my clerks used to read amicus briefs. Now they just read posts on the Volokh conspiracy. And Jack calls me from the floor of the convention and just says, okay, you win, and I'm in. So we'd been talking about it for like 10 months, and then it happened one day. And then we sort of said, okay, who do we want to do this with? And both of us kind of wanted to do it with Bobby Chesney. So I called Bobby, and I sometimes joke that it took me 10 months to convince Jack to do it and one phone call to convince Bobby to do it, which gives you an idea of the temperamental difference between the two. So that's actually the full origin story of Lawfare.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's I was hoping there'd be something to deconstruct there.
Well, and so the sense in which it is like embarrassing is that we thought we were creating a personal blog for the three of us. Like, it never occurred to us that it would become an institution, that it would be, we thought it was like, going to be a little thing that we would, when we had something that was a little too long for an op-ed, we would stick it up there. We never imagined it would have a podcast or it's just kind of grown and grown and grown.
Juggernaut.
Yeah, and so but the origins are very humble indeed.
Yeah, was Brookings involved from the start?
Oh, so Brookings wouldn't host it. Because the reason it's an independent site is I went to Brookings and I said, hey, I'm going to start this little blog, and they were like, we don't do blogs. Host it yourself. So that was why, so then it kind of took off, and it's, it now has a staff of 15 or 16 people. It's got a contributor base that's really quite large, and so it's it's the little project that bit me in the ass and never went go.
Yeah. Oh, well,
thank goodness.
It's pretty, you really built something great.
Well, thank you.
So,
thank you, Richard.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Alrighty. Next up, we have Jacob. Excuse me, the pretzel took longer to chew than I anticipated.
That is true of all pretzels all the time.
Hi, Jacob.
Also, never be in front of a microphone when you eat peanut butter or Ritz crackers.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
Have you ever tried to speak after? So the joke is you can't whistle after you've eaten a Ritz cracker, which is really literally true. Like, if you eat a Ritz cracker, you then cannot whistle for some period of time. But it is also true that it really works. That there are certain things you just cannot really speak well after doing, and one of them is eating peanut butter.
Oh. Jacob.
Hello, Jacob.
Hello. So my question is, do you have any takes or dunks on the news about Project Veritas?
So I saw your question on that, and I'm afraid I have been buried in a hole and have not seen the news about Project Veritas. So please enlighten us. Or me, since Genevieve probably knows all about it.
So if you were aware of the whole issue with regards to Ashley Biden's diary getting obtained by Project Veritas, the two people who...
They just pled.
They just pled guilty, and one of them has agreed to cooperate with DOJ in anything regarding Veritas. But not just pled. I think it was pleading to, transporting stolen materials across state lines. So, yeah.
I will just say this. I don't believe in undercover journalism. I don't believe in it when it's done ethically, or as ethically as it can be. And I, and these are, Project Veritas is not the ethical end of undercover work. It's very hard to do undercover stuff without crossing ethical lines seriously.
Real quick, John Bordeaux mentioned notes in the comments that it wasn't just that they gave the diary to Project Veritas. Veritas also asked them to go back and steal more material from the rest.
Yeah, so this is an example of, it's actually the real live, the IRL version of the Snowden-Manning relationship. Sorry, not Snowden. Assange, right? Where you have, you're basically tasking somebody with stealing stuff for you. It's very dicey territory, and it's, it's stuff that people who do journalism shouldn't be involved with.
Thank you, Jacob.
Also, I just want to say, if you have to have the word Veritas in your name, it's because there's something defective about what you're doing. If you're actually telling the truth, you don't need to put it in your name.
Yes. Dr. Doom, I've untoggled your microphone because I know you normally do not like to be on camera, but I saw that there was a little issue today.
Yeah, but it's slid in. Thanks. In 40 years, I have very rarely been blown. Oh, excuse me. I've been blown away by a technical development, but Dolly has blown me away, and I'm very curious what you think about its consequences, because I think they're very profound.
All right, so tell us about it for people who don't know.
Oh, sure. So a group called OpenAI has developed a combination of this large model language understander called GPT-3 and the ability for it to interpret and then render images. And so when you give it a piece of text, it will generate variations of what it thinks you meant. And it does this astonishingly well. In fact, I put up a link to the beginnings of a version of the King James Bible that has been rendered by Dolly. And its consequences seem to be pretty enormous for things like misinformation, for product development, for disinformation, lots of things. And I'm very, very curious about its consequences for for moderation, for instance.
Yeah. So first of all, this is the same technology that produces "This person does not exist," right?
I'm not familiar with that.
The generative adversarial networks.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you go to thispersondoesnotexist.com, you will see a series of photographs of people who do not exist. And these are generated by one of these generative adversarial networks. As you'll see, you cannot actually look at these people and determine that they're not real people. Every time you go to the URL, it produces a different fake person for you. I have been suddenly barraged with AI ads for AI to generate content, I think because they want me to make want to write Lawfare posts for me. So I was actually thinking of having them generate some fake Lawfare posts and just seeing how they do. Look, we all like to think our trade is special and that we cannot be replaced by technology. But I know we're not supposed to like Woody Allen anymore or quote him. But I will point out that in the late 60s, Woody Allen had a joke that his father had been laid off after 40 years of working for the same company. It was really sad. He was replaced by a little machine this big. It does everything my father does, only much better. And the sad part is my mother went out and bought one. And I think that's all of us right now, except the people who write the code for Dolly. So I don't really know what to say about it. I agree with you. It has very profound implications. And I just hope it isn't capable of doing really good legal analysis.
I don't know. There are so many things that are coming, like they're being created today. And I think it's marvelous and interesting. And it's also just, you'll still have artisans. I mean, I don't know what that means in terms of like content creation, but think about blacksmithing. Like that's an art and a trade, and there are still blacksmiths around. We have machines that can do a lot of tasks, but there's nothing that really would replace like a blacksmith's craftsmanship. So that's what's going to happen. We're going to revert to the most primal trades, stone carving, because those are the things that the AIs can't do. Carpentry, that the AIs can't do. That's just because they can't get the machines to move the way they need to.
And we're going to put AIs on trolley tracks and see which.
That I don't think I'm comfortable with, because it's, again, I know this is like not a hot take, but I always think that there's got to be something in like the person who codes the decision, like the decision-making pathways, like there has to be some bit of that person. So I have no idea, as that machine continues to learn, how that person has evolved, and it freaks me out. So moral dilemmas I don't think should be, I don't know, not that humans do any better. We're pretty crap at it too, so why am I opposed?
Who's next?
I don't know. Does anyone else have questions, Chorus? Oh yes, we do. I'm going to invite Tom McGuckin on. Okay. What do you think about the debt relief, just as like a question? Because I think that everyone who's complaining about it is just complaining to complain. Like, I don't understand how this could be a harm to anyone. Oh, hi, Tom.
Yeah, you should mute Tom until his question, because we're getting, So I think it is very likely bad policy, but I'm not sure I care very much.
Yeah.
I think there's like, anytime you kind of randomly relieve people of a large amount of debt, you set up a weird incentive structure with respect to future behavior. This has been observed since the 18th century. Economists call it moral hazard. I've never understood the term moral hazard since it has nothing to do with morals. But I've always assumed it was an 18th century usage that, but I guess I do think there's a moral hazard problem here. I also think it doesn't do anything about the cost that we're really worried about, which is the cost of tuition and higher education. And that said, I am not all that fussed about, several millions of people having less debt at the cost of the taxpayer. I understand all the arguments against it, that it's, and I think it's probably a bad idea, but Biden was under a lot of pressure to do it, to do a lot more than he did.
I was going to say, it's kind of a moderate step for what everyone wanted. And also
Right.
just in terms of just compared to like interest on a loan, like what is this amount really compared to the interest on the loan long term? Like, I don't know. I don't know enough about this.
We should have somebody on to talk about the arguments for it and against it. My old colleague Beth Akers, who used to be at Brookings and is now at AEI, would be a very good person to have come talk about this. Is what she works on education expenditures. That said, I don't understand the rage about it. That is like, so that's my.
Yeah, I mean, if we packaged it as a tax credit, would they still be mad? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, we'll talk about it later. But Tom, so good to see you. I'm pulling you up. Hi, Tom. You're unmuted.
Hi, Ben.
Hello, Tom McGuckin.
It's 3 o'clock here, or actually now I'm 3:45, but the bottom line is I'm still sort of technically working. I always have trouble with your 5 o'clock thing. Listen, Ben, I'll get to my question. I read this Wall Street Journal thing. I can't remember the two authors. Then your buddy Jack took him on in Lawfare, okay?
Rifkin and Casey.
Yeah, and basically said they were full of it. But I think Jack missed the bigger picture, and that is there's a lot of smoke, okay, in the MAL thing. And once I just start detecting all this smoke, I start to realize that this is not going to go anywhere. And I just wanted your opinion, because, you look at Peter and Asha, they're all foaming at the mouth. He did it, he's illegal, they should get him, okay? But I just don't think I don't think it's going to happen, because there's too much debate about whether, he has the right to unilaterally in his mind, without telling anybody, classify all this stuff. What's your take? Is this just all going to I think it's taken away from the January 6th committee is what it is.
So I have a few thoughts on this. The first is I think it is, first of all, I think you're right that it is distracted a lot of attention from the January 6th issue. And I think that's a good thing, in the sense that there was a huge amount of pressure on the Justice Department to do stuff on January 6th. And that pressure was unhealthy, to do stuff really fast. And I think distracting everybody with a shiny object over here bought like a couple months of time for the Justice Department in the January 6th space that I think is probably very healthy, actually. So that's thought number one, which is that you're right. It's just that it's good, not a shame. The second thing, and Liz Cheney will come back in September, and we'll all think about January 6th again. But having us be distracted in August by Mar-a-Lago is a good thing. The second thing is I don't believe anybody has ever stolen 700 pages of classified material before and not been indicted. And yes, there are going to be some arguments about which documents were really classified and whether he had the authority to declassify them. There was a point early this year when the National Archive made clear we consider this classified material, and it is, whether it's classified or not, it's U.S. federal government property. You need to return it. And he didn't. I don't see how those facts are debatable. And I also don't see how he, so at the point at which you say, oh, sorry, I thought they were mine. They're mine, right? And the National Archives says, no, give them back, and you give them back, no one gets indicted for that.
Mm-hmm.
The point at which you hold on to them and lie after the National Archive has identified them as federal government property, I think you're in some very dangerous territory, whether the material is classified or not. Number two, volume matters, or as we might say more provocatively, size matters. And, you know, when Comey gave his infamous July 7th, 2016 speech declining to prosecute Hillary Clinton, he actually laid out the standards. Everybody remembers that speech for him saying she had behaved, I forget what the words, extremely carelessly, right? Everybody remembers him laying out, but what people don't remember is he lays out the standards under which, in his judgment, no reasonable prosecutor would bring this case. And he specifically identifies the categories of cases involving mishandling of classified information that have generated prosecutions in the past. One of them is excessive large volumes of information, that is, hoarding information in a fashion, I believe this is an exact quote, that gives rise to an inference of misconduct. Another is obstruction of justice, right? I forget what the others are. All of them basically apply here except espionage. And so when you look at these and you say, this is what the director of the FBI, whatever you think about Comey, identified as the factors that will lead to prosecution. And 3 or 4 of them are available here. I think there's I think if you're Merrick Garland, you don't authorize that search if you're not prepared to bring the case. And then finally, one other thing related to it, which is all of this activity took place after he was no longer president. Mm-hmm. And in all of the other matters that have involved Trump, they implicate presidential power. Can you apply the obstruction of justice statute to an act of the president when there's no clear statement in the statute that it applies to the presidency, right? That's a complicated question. Here, it is not a complicated question because none of those issues apply. Now, Tom raises both in his question and in the chat the question of intent. And here the problem is that Trump announced his intent. He has said to a number of people, these documents are mine. He has he apparently talked to the FBI people. And so I think actually proving that he intended to keep this information, these documents, and that it was his intent, not simply somebody else's, may not be the hardest thing in the world. So I think he's got some trouble on this. And I think the facts in that affidavit must be awful. Because, you know, Chris Wray is the most cautious, careful, don't put your foot out of line man in the world. And he authorized this. And Merrick Garland is a very, very careful lawyer who will have thought through all of the issues, and he authorized it. So I just think at the end of the day, Trump's got a world of hurt here.
Yeah. It's also like they know who they're dealing with. They know he's going to bluster. They know he's going to bluff. He's going to do everything that he thinks that he can to make you look like the bad guy. And honestly, the way that reacted to every part of his bluster from the recovery, I refuse to call it a raid. It was a recovery, the FBI's recovery of the documents. It seems like they were very prepared for his reaction.
I think that's right, and I think they would have been insane to go in there without dotting every I and crossing
Agreed.
every T, and we have not seen an undotted I or an uncrossed T yet, and so I come back to the fact that the facts must be very bad.
I'm very excited to read it, redacted or not.
Yeah, well, the Justice Department filed its proposed redactions today, so we'll see what happens.
I think we're going to get them maybe tomorrow. I'm kind of excited.
My guess is the redactions are so extensive that the judge is not going to release them. Oh, wait, Chris Hulst says, and we see them tomorrow. The judge ordered them released, John Hawkinson said. So that is news to me. I will be in Quebec by then.
Safely in Canada.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Should we wrap up?
I think we should.
Or are there more?
There are a couple of questions. Richard just asked a follow-up, so we'll go with this one. Supposing Trump is indicted for taking the classified documents, how likely is it that his typical legal delaying strategies could drag the proceedings past the 2024 election season? I think low, but that's just my one-word answer.
I do.
Ben?
I do too.
Yeah.
Not getting to trial within 2 years would be hard.
Yeah. I mean, including all possible incompetencies.
The election season, though, he asks. Well, that's kind of already started. So,
I mean, he's very much intimating that he's planning on running. I mean, it's interesting. Especially if you have any more thoughts on this, listen to Sarah Longwell and her podcast, because she does a great job in the focus group reading the tea leaves.
All right, we are going to leave it there. We will be back tomorrow.
No.
But I won't. No,
Really?
Kate has a guest.
Oh, she does? Okay.
I believe Kate has a guest. But I'm not going to be here, and I'm not going to be here Monday. I will be back next Wednesday. GDF will be back next Wednesday.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I may be back sooner, guys. You can't get rid of me.
Kate will be back tomorrow. It'll be, oh God, it'll be 22 hours and 3 minutes from now. 23 hours and 3 minutes from now. And until then,
we don't have fun anymore, but we have the power of branding and the choices we make in vocabulary. This is going to be a little bit of a soapbox, everyone. Let's not call it a raid anymore. It was not. It was a recovery. Let's not engage with the vocabulary of people who are trying to give you misinformation. Let's be cautious about our vocabulary choices and refuse to engage with their choices. Please. Thank you. So in lieu of fun, we have a soapbox from Genevieve. Bye, everyone.